Hello, Alan.
Hello, Miss Letty.
Right, are you ready? We're going to continue with chapter 3, part
Right.
2. As we like to keep it short and sweet, we divide the chapter into two parts. So our story is called A Christmas Carol, and without any further ado, let's get going. Off you go, Alan.
The family repeated his wish, and Tiny Tim said, last of all, God bless us everyone. He sat very close to his father on a small chair. Bob held his son's thin little hand in his own. The boy had a special place in his father's heart. Spirit, said Scrooge, with an interest that he had never felt before. Tell me if Tiny Tim will live. In the future, I see an empty chair by the fire with a crust beside it. If these shadows do not change, the child will die. No, no, said Scrooge. Oh, no, kind spirit, says he will live. If his life does not change soon, he will die before the next Christmas.
What does that matter? What does that matter? There are too many people in the world, so it's a good thing if some of them die. Oh dear. Well, I think there are some people who think like Scrooge.
Oh,
Maybe
yes,
you and I
absolutely.
don't,
Yes,
but it's very aggressive, that isn't it? It's very
yes.
harsh. Scrooge was ashamed and sad to hear his own words spoken by the Spirit, but he lifted his head when he heard his name. So the words were spoken by the Spirit, but the feeling was what Scrooge would have said in his normal daily life, no? Mr. Scrooge, said Bob, let's drink to Mr. Scrooge, whose money has paid for this meal. His money, said Mrs. Cratchit angrily. What can we buy with 15 shillings a week? Why should we drink to the health of a hateful, hard, unfeeling, mean old man like Scrooge? Wow, she had a lot of adjectives for Scrooge, didn't she?
Absolutely.
Hateful, hard, unfeeling, mean. There wasn't
Mean.
one left that she hadn't mentioned.
Yes,
So she didn't have good feelings for Scrooge, did she?
no. My dears, said Bob gently, remember it's Christmas. Well, Bob, I'll drink to his health only because of you and because it's Christmas. Long life to Mr. Scrooge. A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to him. He'll be very merry and very happy, I'm sure. When the children heard Scrooge's name, a dark shadow came over their happiness for a while, and they were quiet and a little sad. But 5 minutes later, they were talking and laughing and telling stories 10 times merrier than before. They were not a good-looking or well-dressed family, but they were happy and grateful and loved each other. As they disappeared in the light of the Spirit's torch, Scrooge could not take his eyes off them, especially Tiny Tim. By this time it was getting dark and snowing heavily. The Spirit took Scrooge into many houses where fires were burning cheerfully and food was cooking and people were merrily welcoming friends and families into their homes.
Well, this is the right Christmas feeling, no? The right Christmas feeling is to be merry, welcoming people, enjoying good moments, sharing the moment. This is the Christmas spirit. But sometimes some of us are Scrooge and we don't do that. So we should live in the present and try and enjoy the moment. This is the idea. The ghost was delighted to see all this excitement and made sure that he lifted his torch over every poor family to give them more fun, more food, and greater happiness. Then the spirit took Scrooge away from the busy capital to a wild, lonely place in the country where no trees grew. Here they visited a small stone house, a long way from any town or village, where an old man and woman were singing Christmas carols with their children and grandchildren. The spirit did not stay long here, but told Scrooge to hold his robe again. Now, carols is special songs that they sing at Christmas. These are carols.
Where are we going? Not up in the air, surely. And Scrooge, terribly frightened, looked down as they flew over the land and then over the sea. It was a stormy, windy weather, and the waves crashed violently underneath them. The spirit took Scrooge to a lighthouse built on a lonely rock several miles from the land. A light was kept burning at the top in order to warn the sailors to keep away from the dangerous rocks. Two men lived here in this cold, unfriendly place, far away from their families. But the spirit smiled to see them shake hands, wish each other a Merry Christmas, and sing a carol together in front of their fire. Again, the spirit and Scrooge flew on, and together they landed on a ship in the middle of the sea. Here, every man, although many miles from home, had a kind word for his friend, or thought warmly of his family because it was Christmas.
So here we see a picture of the sea, a lighthouse. The lighthouse is a building which warns ships that they are near the coast and to be careful. And I suppose these are two men on ship wishing each other good wishes for Christmas. It was a great surprise to Scrooge, while listening to the noise of the wind and waves, to hear a happy laugh. He recognized it as his nephew's and found himself with the smiling spirit beside him in his nephew's bright, warm sitting room. When Scrooge's nephew laughed, everybody who was with him wanted to laugh too. He had that kind of laugh. And at the moment, his very pretty wife and several of his friends were laughing with him. He said that Christmas was humbug, cried Scrooge's nephew. That's very bad of him, Fred, said his wife. He's a strange old man, said Scrooge's nephew, but I'm sorry for him. His money is no use to him, you see. He isn't happy at all. No, he isn't at all happy or comfortable, although he's rich. It's sad to think of him sitting alone in his cold room. And so I'm going to invite him every Christmas. He can be cross and miserable if he likes, but I'll go on inviting him, and perhaps one day he'll think better of Christmas. Now, here the word cross means angry. So if you are cross, you are angry. Right, off you go.
After tea, the cheerful little group sang songs and played music. Scrooge recognised the song that his little sister used to sing and remembered sadly what the ghost of Christmas past had shown him. Later, the friends played guessing games, and Scrooge joined in the games with delight. Nobody except the spirit could hear him, but he often guessed the right answer. "It's time to go now," said the ghost, smiling at the old man's childish excitement. "No, spirit, please let me stay a little longer. Look, they're playing a new game." It was a game called Yes and No, in which Mr. Scrooge's nephew had to think of something and the others had to ask questions to discover what it was. The only possible answer were yes or no. Scrooge heard that Fred was thinking of a living animal, a wild animal, sometimes an angry animal, which lived in London and walked in the streets.
Every time he answered a question, Fred could not stop himself laughing. At last, his wife's dark, pretty sister started laughing too. "I know what it is, Fred. I know," she cried out. "It's your Uncle Scrooge." Everyone laughed until they cried. Have you ever laughed until you cry, Alan?
Well, you got really close to it. Yes, the old tears start to run down your cheeks.
I think it happens about once a year for me, something like that. Very seldom, but it does happen when you
Yeah.
have uncontrollable laughter and you
Yes.
can't breathe because you're
Yes.
laughing so much. And it could be
Yes.
something very simple and very silly. Everyone laughed until they cried. What a wonderful game! What a clever idea of Fred's. But at last, Fred dried his eyes and said, "We've been very merry because of him, so I think we should drink to his health. Here's to Uncle Scrooge. A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to the old man. Uncle Scrooge." To Uncle Scrooge they all cried, carefully lifting their glasses. Uncle Scrooge wanted to thank them, but the spirit hurried him away. The ghost seemed much older now. His brown hair had become grey. So, as usual, a word can mean different things. You can cry with this word, cried, or it's like shouting. So, you have to think of the context. The context is very important.
"Ah, spirits' lives so short," asked Scrooge. "My life in this world ends at midnight tonight. Listen, it's a quarter to midnight now." The church clock was striking the 3/4. "Excuse me for asking, spirit," said Scrooge, "but what are those strange things near your foot?" "Oh, man, look here," said the spirit sadly, and brought out from under his robe 2 ghostly figures, a boy and a girl. They were thin and poorly dressed, with cold, mean eyes and dry, yellow skin, and their faces showed only a frightening and murderous hate. Scrooge had never seen anything so terrible or so sad.
So, here's the picture. This is the ghost, and here are the horrible children under his robe. "These miserable children are man's," said the spirit. "The boy is crime, the girl is need. They will destroy man if nothing is done about them." So It's advising that mankind needs to change their ways. Otherwise, they will destroy themselves. Can't anyone help them? Cried Scrooge. Are there no prisons? Said the spirit, turning on Scrooge for the last time with his own words. Are there no workhouses? So the ghost repeats a lot of Scrooge's ideas and the things he has said in the past. The clock struck 12. Scrooge looked, but could no longer see the ghost or the children. He was alone again. So we've finished now chapter 3. We divided it into 2 parts, so it's not too long for the viewers. Now, I would like to suggest a few things for the viewers. The story, if they want, they don't have to watch the video, but they can listen to it and see how much they understand while listening and not looking. So a story or a book can be used in many different ways to help them with their learning process. So they can sit calmly and listen with their eyes closed and see what they can understand. Or another exercise would be to follow us reading the text and listening to us. And they could even stop the video and repeat what we have said to imitate the pronunciation. And then they can switch off our voices and they can read it by themselves. So there's all little different activities they can do. So reading is a good exercise to help, to improve their vocabulary and their listening skills. So, Alan, we still got a few more chapters to go.
All right. Oh, well, to be continued, as they say.
To be continued. And I would like to thank you for your present.
My pleasure.
And if people like our videos, Alan, they should click on like because that helps us know what videos they like most. Also, they should subscribe because then we know that people are watching us and it makes it all that more pleasant what we do. So thank you, Alan.
You're very welcome.
I will see you for the next chapter.
Sure, will do. Okay.